Why narcissists seem so confident on the outside, yet deep down, they fear certain people more than anything else. It's not the critics, it's not the haters, it's the ones they simply cannot control. For a narcissist, control is oxygen, and when someone takes that away, their entire mask starts to crack. But what really happens inside their mind when you refuse to play their game? Why do they panic, lash out, or even disappear the moment they realize you're beyond their reach? In this video, we're going to break down the hidden fear that drives their behavior. And I promise, by the end, you'll see narcissists in a way you've never seen before. If you've ever dealt with one, or maybe you're dealing with one right now, this will give you the clarity you've been looking for. So stick around until the very end, and if any of this connects with your experience, share your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoy content that uncovers the psychology behind toxic behaviors, make sure to subscribe, because you're going to want to see what's coming next. When we talk about narcissists, the first thing most people notice is their outer image. They seem confident, self-assured, and often larger than life. They present themselves as people who know exactly what they want and who have no doubts about their place in the world. But beneath that carefully built surface, there is an inner structure that is much more fragile than it appears. And at the very heart of that structure lies one thing: control. Narcissists survive on the ability to control their environment, their relationships, and the way others perceive them. It's the foundation of how they move through life. Without it, the mask begins to slip. That's why the single greatest fear for a narcissist isn't being criticized, rejected, or even hated. It's facing someone they cannot control. To understand this fear, we first need to understand why control matters so much to them. For most people, relationships are built on a sense of trust, freedom, and mutual respect. We give space, we allow independence, and we feel secure when the people around us have their own lives and thoughts. For a narcissist, it's the opposite. Freedom in others feels like danger, because it means unpredictability. If someone is independent, they cannot be easily manipulated, persuaded, or bent to serve the narcissist's needs. This unpredictability creates a kind of chaos in the narcissist's mind, because they survive by making sure every situation revolves around them. When they lose that grip, it's not just uncomfortable, it feels like a direct threat to their very identity. At their core, narcissists are driven by a deep insecurity. They don't see themselves as stable or whole, no matter how much they pretend to be. That's why they build a false image, often called the false self, to show to the world. This false self is confident, attractive, intelligent, and in control. But it's an illusion that constantly requires energy to maintain. And the way they keep that illusion alive is by drawing validation and attention from others. They need people to reflect back the image they want to see. They need people to follow their rules, admire them, and fall in line with their expectations. When someone refuses to play this role, the mirror cracks. Suddenly, the narcissist is faced with a reflection they cannot manage, and that reflection reminds them of the truth they spend their lives running from, that they are not as powerful, secure, or in control as they want to believe. This is why independence is seen as such a threat in their worldview. Imagine a person who refuses to react to the narcissist's usual tactics: the guilt trips, the silent treatments, the manipulation, the charm, or even the anger. Instead of falling into the trap, this person stays calm, holds their boundaries, and shows that they don't need the narcissist's approval. To a healthy individual, this kind of independence would be respected, even admired. But to a narcissist, it feels like suffocation. It feels like they are losing their grip, like they are being exposed. In their mind, control equals safety, and loss of control equals danger. Independence, therefore, is not just a choice others make, it becomes a direct challenge to the narcissist's survival system. What makes this fear even stronger
is that narcissists interpret independence as rejection. They don't see it as a healthy boundary. They see it as someone deliberately turning against them. If you cannot be controlled, they assume you must secretly be their enemy. This is why narcissists often respond with anger, accusations, or attempts to shame those who don't play along. They will say things like, "You don't care about me," or "You think you're better than me," or they might suddenly withdraw their affection to punish you. All of this is an attempt to regain the control that was lost. But if none of these tactics work, the fear inside them grows, and so does the hostility. It's important to realize that for narcissists, this isn't just about ego, it's about survival. Their entire sense of self is built like a house of cards. Control is what keeps the cards standing, and independence in others is the gust of wind that can blow it all apart. When someone resists control, the narcissist feels small, powerless, and exposed. And because they cannot face that truth, they project it onto the person in front of them. They may accuse you of being controlling, difficult, or selfish, when in reality, you are simply standing firm in your independence. This projection allows them to avoid looking at their own fear, but it also shows just how threatened they feel. Another reason narcissists fear people they can't control is that those people represent freedom, the very thing they secretly wish they had, but cannot allow themselves to experience. The narcissist's life is ruled by the need to maintain an image. They cannot truly be authentic because authenticity would expose the insecurities they work so hard to hide. So when they see someone living with independence, someone who is not easily manipulated, it's a painful reminder of what they lack. Instead of inspiring them, it threatens them. It feels like a spotlight shining directly on their inner emptiness. This is why many narcissists prefer relationships with people who are easier to dominate. Those who are highly empathetic, insecure, or eager to please. Such individuals provide the validation and control the narcissist craves without much resistance. But when someone stands out as unshakable, strong, and independent, it disrupts the narcissist's entire system. This type of person cannot be molded into a source of endless validation. Instead, they demand respect, and they expose the imbalance in the relationship. To the narcissist, that exposure feels unbearable because it reveals the truth they are most desperate to hide, that their power is fragile and their confidence is an act. The fear of losing control can push narcissists to extreme behaviors. Some will try harder to manipulate, turning to more aggressive tactics. Others might suddenly pull away, cutting ties in order to escape the reminder of their own weakness. In both cases, the motivation is the same, the terror of facing someone who cannot be controlled. Because if one person resists their power, it plants a seed of doubt. It shows that their tactics don't work on everyone. And that realization shakes the very ground they stand on. So when we say that the greatest fear of a narcissist is someone they cannot control, it isn't just a casual statement. It's the truth that explains much of their behavior. Control is their lifeline, the glue that holds their identity together. Without it, they are forced to face the fragility they've been running from all along. And that's something they will almost do anything to avoid. Independence, then, is more than just a choice others make. It becomes the narcissist's deepest nightmare.
When we look closer at the behavior of narcissists, one truth stands out above all the rest. Control isn't just something they enjoy, it's the very foundation of their existence. It's the mechanism through which they hold their lives together, the thread that ties their false identity in place. Without control, everything begins to unravel. And this is why they cling to it so desperately, because for them, control isn't about connection or even about dominance in the way we usually think of it. It's about survival. Narcissists manipulate because they need three essential things: attention,
validation, and superiority. These three elements are like fuel for them. Attention feeds the false self they've created, the mask that convinces others they are confident, desirable, and powerful. Validation reassures them that their carefully constructed image is working, that others are still buying into the performance. And superiority gives them the illusion of being untouchable, of existing above the vulnerabilities that terrify them deep down. Without these things, the narcissist begins to feel exposed, empty, and irrelevant, and so they seek to control people, environments, and narratives to guarantee that these needs are constantly met. To understand why this is so central, think about the way most healthy relationships work. In a balanced relationship, two people exchange respect, affection, and support. Neither one has to dominate the other because both feel secure enough in themselves to give and receive freely. A narcissist doesn't operate this way. To them, relationships are not about equality, they're about supply. Every interaction is measured by how much it strengthens their fragile sense of self. If they feel admired, praised, or obeyed, they feel strong. If someone resists, questions them, or pulls away, they feel weak. And since weakness is unbearable to them, they act out to regain their sense of power. This is where manipulation becomes their default tool. Their manipulation can take many forms. Sometimes it's charm, the flattering words, the exaggerated attention, the promises that make you feel special. Other times it's guilt, the subtle reminders of what they've done for you, or how much you're letting them down by not giving them what they want. And if charm or guilt doesn't work, they might use fear or anger, raised voices, silent treatments, threats of leaving, or even public humiliation. To the outside world, this behavior can seem erratic, shifting from warmth to cruelty without warning. But underneath, it's all serving one goal: control. Because as long as they can keep you responding to their tactics, whether you're chasing their affection, defending yourself, or walking on eggshells, they still hold the power. This is where many people get confused. They mistake the narcissist's intensity for passion, or their jealousy for love, or their persistence for loyalty. But in reality, none of these behaviors are about love in the healthy sense. They're about keeping control. A narcissist's version of love is conditional. It's given only when the other person plays their role in maintaining the narcissist's image. The moment someone asserts independence, questions their authority, or stops feeding their ego, the love is withdrawn. It's replaced by coldness, criticism, or punishment. This cycle isn't love, it's a survival strategy, a way of keeping people tethered to the narcissist so they don't have to face the emptiness inside. And that emptiness is key to understanding why their sense of identity collapses without control. Underneath the mask of superiority is a person who has never truly developed a stable sense of self. Narcissists often grew up in environments where love was conditional, where they had to perform, achieve, or behave in certain ways to be accepted. Over time, they learn to hide their true feelings and build a false image instead. That image is what they present to the world today, but it's fragile, and it constantly needs reinforcement. Control ensures that reinforcement keeps coming, that people don't stop reflecting back the illusion they've worked so hard to create. When control slips, the cracks in that illusion begin to show, and the narcissist feels as though they are disappearing. Think of it like this. Control to a narcissist is like oxygen. Without it, they cannot breathe. Every moment without control feels like suffocation, like the walls are closing in. This is why they will go to extremes to keep it, sometimes even destroying relationships, reputations, or opportunities just to reassert their dominance. They cannot tolerate the thought of being seen as powerless, because powerlessness exposes the truth they are most terrified of, that their confidence is only a performance, and beneath it lies insecurity and fear. For those who have been in relationships with narcissists, this explains so much of the confusion. You may have wondered why they seemed so loving one moment and so cruel the next. You may have questioned why they were so obsessed with what others thought of them, or why they always had to win every argument, no matter how small. The answer is simple. All of it ties back to control. Every behavior, every manipulation, every emotional swing is about maintaining power over the narrative and the people in their orbit. And this is the crucial takeaway. When dealing with narcissists, it's important to see control not as a form of love or passion, but as a survival mechanism. Their need to dominate doesn't come from genuine connection. It comes from desperation. The desperation to keep their identity intact, to silence the voice inside them that whispers they're not enough, to cover up the shame they refuse to face. Understanding this doesn't excuse their behavior, but it does reveal why they act the way they do. It shows that behind the mask of superiority is someone who is deeply afraid of losing their grip on the image they've built. Recognizing this truth can be liberating. It allows you to step back and see their actions for what they really are, not a reflection of your worth, but a reflection of their need for control. And once you see it, you no longer have to get caught in the endless cycle of manipulation. You can understand that their behavior isn't about love, it isn't about fairness, and it isn't about reality. It's about survival. One of the most fascinating and threatening dynamics in the world of narcissism is the presence of independent thinkers. To most people, independence is a sign of strength, self-awareness, and maturity. We admire those who can think for themselves, who hold their boundaries, and who don't easily fall under the pressure of others. But for a narcissist, independence is not seen as strength. It's seen as defiance. It's not interpreted as individuality. It's interpreted as rejection. And rejection for them is unbearable. Independent people mirror back something that narcissists cannot tolerate: their insecurity. When someone refuses to submit, refuses to be controlled, and refuses to play into the endless cycle of manipulation, it shines a spotlight on the narcissist's weakness. The narcissist lives under the illusion that they are always in control, always admired, and always the most powerful person in the room. An independent thinker shatters that illusion without even trying.
This is one of the reasons narcissists are often drawn to highly empathetic or people-pleasing personalities. They are easier to mold, easier to manipulate, and less likely to resist. But when they come across someone strong, confident, and independent, the dynamic shifts. Instead of feeling empowered, the narcissist feels threatened. They suddenly realize that their usual tricks, whether it's charm, guilt, or intimidation, don't work the same way. This realization doesn't just frustrate them, it terrifies them. Because if their tactics don't work, it means they're losing the one thing they depend on most: control. What's even more powerful about independent thinkers is that they don't necessarily expose the narcissist with words or accusations. They do it simply through resistance. They don't bend under pressure. They don't allow emotional blackmail to dictate their choices. They don't get caught in the trap of endless arguments meant to wear them down. Their very refusal to be controlled is enough to reveal the narcissist's desperation. And when a narcissist sees their manipulation exposed, it feels like their mask is slipping. To them, that is one of the most terrifying experiences imaginable. But the narcissist doesn't experience this exposure as a neutral truth. They experience it as a personal attack. In their worldview, independence equals rejection. If you are not under their control, they believe you are against them. This black and white thinking is central to how they operate. You are either with them, feeding their ego and following their rules, or you are against them, threatening their identity and trying to destroy them. There is no middle ground, and because independence falls outside their control, they interpret it as betrayal, disloyalty, or open defiance. This is why independent people often face the sharpest side of the narcissist's behavior. When charm doesn't work and guilt doesn't stick, the narcissist often turns to rage. Their anger is not just about the immediate situation, it's about the deeper fear that they are losing control. That rage might come out in explosive arguments, cruel insults, or attempts to tear down the independent person's confidence. Other times it shows up in cold, silent withdrawal, meant to punish and frighten the other person into compliance. In every case, the goal is the same: to break down the independence that threatens them. And yet, no matter how hard they try, some people remain unshakable. They maintain their boundaries, they don't get pulled into emotional chaos, and they refuse to sacrifice their independence for the narcissist's approval. This is the kind of strength that narcissists cannot tolerate. It forces them to confront the reality that not everyone can be controlled, that their power is not absolute, and that their tactics are not foolproof. To a narcissist, this realization feels like humiliation. It feels like they're being exposed, not just to themselves, but to anyone who might be watching. And humiliation is something they will go to great lengths to avoid. This is where the cycle often escalates. A narcissist who feels threatened by an independent thinker may begin smear campaigns, spreading lies or half-truths in an effort to damage that person's reputation. They may try to recruit others against them, painting themselves as the victim and the independent person as cold, selfish, or cruel. In doing this, they attempt to regain control indirectly. If they cannot control the independent thinker, they'll try to control how others see them. It's another survival mechanism, a way to rebuild the illusion of superiority and influence. If there is one thing that narcissists dread more than anything else, it is exposure. Exposure is the unraveling of the carefully constructed mask they have built to hide their insecurity. Exposure is the moment when others begin to see past the charm, the manipulation, and the illusion of superiority and catch a glimpse of the emptiness underneath. And often this exposure doesn't come from enemies or critics. It comes from the people they cannot control, those who refuse to play by their rules, those who hold on to independence, those who see through the manipulation. These are the ones who pose the greatest threat to a narcissist's image. Narcissists live for their image.
Everything they do, every relationship, every conversation, every display of success is built around protecting and reinforcing how others see them. Their image is their shield. It convinces the outside world that they are confident, powerful, admirable, and in control. But this image is fragile. It is like glass, polished and shiny on the outside, but one crack is enough to shatter it. People they cannot control are often the ones who bring that crack into view. Not necessarily because they're trying to expose the narcissist, but because their very resistance reveals the truth. When someone refuses to be manipulated, they reveal to others what the narcissist is trying to hide. That the narcissist doesn't actually have as much power as they pretend. A person who resists control shows that the emperor has no clothes, that the tactics don't work on everyone, that the superiority is only an act. To the narcissist, this is terrifying, because if one person can see through them, others might see through them as well. And once the mask starts slipping, it becomes harder and harder to keep it in place. This is why narcissists dread being unmasked. To be unmasked means to be revealed for what they truly are: insecure, fearful, and dependent on others for validation. It means the carefully woven narrative of being special, powerful, or untouchable is exposed as fiction. This kind of exposure is more than just embarrassing to them. It feels like annihilation. It feels like their very existence is being threatened, because so much of their identity is built on the mask. Without it, they don't know who they are. The fear of exposure is so intense that narcissists live in constant vigilance. They monitor how people perceive them. They rewrite stories to make themselves look better. They go to great lengths to discredit anyone who challenges their narrative. And when someone refuses to be controlled, that person automatically becomes a danger, not because they're trying to attack the narcissist, but because their independence risks revealing the truth. In the narcissist's eyes, even neutrality is dangerous. If you're not actively protecting their image, you could be exposing it. This is why smear campaigns are such a common tactic among narcissists. If they sense that someone is not under their control, or worse, that this person might expose them, they go on the offensive. They spread lies, twist stories, and recruit others to their side, all in an effort to destroy the credibility of the person who threatens them. The goal is not only to punish the independent thinker, but also to ensure that if the truth does come out, no one will believe it. In this way, smear campaigns are really just preemptive strikes against exposure. They are desperate attempts to protect the mask by destroying anyone who might reveal what's behind it. The connection between control and image is inseparable for a narcissist. Control allows them to shape how others see them. If they can control the narrative, they can maintain the mask. But once control slips, the mask is at risk of slipping too. And for narcissists, image is everything. Without it, they feel invisible. Without it, they feel worthless. This explains the intensity of their reactions when exposure looms. They may explode in rage, desperate to silence the threat. They may completely withdraw, cutting ties before anyone can get close enough to see the truth. They may even reinvent themselves entirely, moving to a new environment, creating a new image, and pretending the old cracks never existed. To an outside observer, these behaviors can seem extreme, even irrational. But to the narcissist, they are necessary, because in their mind, exposure is the one thing they cannot allow.
When a narcissist loses control, when independence threatens their power, or when the mask of superiority begins to crack, something very predictable happens inside of them. an emotional storm that they cannot regulate. This is what we might call the fallout. On the surface, it may look like rage, silent treatments, or vindictive smear campaigns, but underneath, what's really happening is fear. Fear that they are being exposed, fear that they are being rejected, and fear that they are powerless. For a narcissist, fear is intolerable, and so they immediately convert it into other emotions and behaviors that protect them from facing the truth. The first and most obvious form of this fallout is anger. Narcissistic anger isn't just about frustration, it's a defense mechanism. When they feel weak, small, or vulnerable, they erupt with rage to cover it up. Their anger is often disproportionate to the situation because it's not about what's happening in the moment, it's about the wound that was just touched. For example, when someone refuses to bend to their control, they may explode over something minor, turning it into a full-blown attack. This outburst is designed to intimidate, to silence resistance, and to remind the other person that crossing them comes with consequences. But beneath the shouting and aggression, the truth is much simpler. They're terrified of being powerless. Another form of emotional fallout is withdrawal, which often shows up as the silent treatment. Instead of exploding outward, they turn their control inward, withholding affection, communication, or even their presence altogether. The silent treatment serves two purposes. First, it punishes the other person, making them feel guilty, anxious, or desperate to fix the situation. Second, it allows the narcissist to regain a sense of superiority. By refusing to speak or acknowledge the other person, they create an illusion of control, as if they are the ones deciding whether the relationship continues or not. But again, beneath this calculated coldness lies the same fear, the fear of losing influence, the fear of not being able to dictate the terms of the relationship. And then there are smear campaigns. When anger and withdrawal aren't enough, some narcissists take things to a public level. They may spread rumors, twist the truth, or try to convince others that the independent person is cruel, unstable, or untrustworthy. This tactic has less to do with the person they are targeting and more to do with restoring their own image. If they cannot control someone directly, they'll try to control the narrative surrounding them. Smear campaigns are a desperate attempt to protect the mask. By tearing someone else down, they rebuild themselves in the eyes of others. Yet again, it all stems from the same root: fear of being exposed. After understanding the inner workings of narcissists, their hunger for control, their fear of independence, their dread of exposure, and the chaos of their emotional fallout, it's natural to ask, what can you do to protect yourself? How can you interact with someone like this without being pulled into their cycle of manipulation and control? The answer lies in one powerful word: boundaries. Boundaries are your shield. They are the invisible lines you draw to protect your energy, your identity, and your freedom from being consumed by someone else's need for dominance. For many people, boundaries feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you are empathetic or used to putting others' needs above your own. But when you are dealing with a narcissist, boundaries are not just optional, they are essential. A narcissist thrives on blurring lines, on making you question where you end and they begin. They push limits to see how far they can control you. When you set clear, firm boundaries, whether that means saying no, refusing to engage in endless arguments, or limiting the time you spend around them, you are taking back your power. You are signaling that you cannot be controlled. Boundaries don't always need to be loud or confrontational. Sometimes the most effective boundary is silence. Not the silence of punishment like the narcissist uses, but the silence of refusal. Refusing to respond to manipulation. Refusing to defend yourself against false accusations. Refusing to chase after someone who is withdrawing to test your devotion. In these moments, your silence is not weakness, it is strength. It communicates that you are not going to play the game, and that alone is one of the most powerful protections you can create. And equally important is recognizing their tactics for what they are. Once you understand that narcissistic behaviors are not about love, respect, or fairness, but about control, you begin to see them differently. What once felt personal no longer feels personal at all. Their anger isn't about you, it's about their fear. Their silent treatments aren't about your failure, they're about their desperation. Their smear campaigns aren't about your truth, they're about their image. This shift in perspective is life-changing. It allows you to step back emotionally, to stop internalizing their behavior, and to see it for what it really is, a survival mechanism that has nothing to do with your value. When you recognize the tactics, you stop being vulnerable to them. Manipulation only works when it confuses or destabilizes you. Once you see the pattern, you can predict the moves, and when you can predict the moves, they lose their power. You might think of it like watching a magician once you've learned the trick. The illusion no longer fools you. The performance loses its grip. In the same way, when you learn the tricks of narcissistic behavior, you no longer get caught in the illusion. You may still see the performance, but you won't be pulled into it. And perhaps the most important form of protection is this: remembering that you do not need to fight the narcissist to win. You don't need to out-argue them. You don't need to prove them wrong. You don't need to convince them to change. All of these roads lead back into their cycle, where they are still setting the terms of the interaction. The real strength lies in staying unshakable. The narcissist wants to pull you into a storm, anger, guilt, confusion, chaos. If you remain grounded, calm, and steady, the storm eventually burns itself out. Because control only works when there's a reaction. No reaction means no power. This is where hope enters the picture. It can feel overwhelming to deal with someone who thrives on control and who lashes out when they lose it. But the truth is, you don't have to match their energy. You don't have to destroy them or fix them. All you need to do is stand firm in your independence. Your strength is not in fighting them, it's in refusing to be consumed by them. Your freedom comes not from changing their behavior, but from protecting your own. Strong boundaries, clear recognition of their tactics, and an unshakable commitment to your independence, these are the tools that protect you. And once you begin using them, something powerful happens. The narcissist no longer looks as intimidating as they once did. Their anger no longer shakes you. Their silence no longer unsettles you. Their smear campaigns no longer define you. Because you see the truth. Their behavior is not about you. It never was. It's about their fear of losing control, their panic at being exposed, and their desperate attempt to hold together a mask that has been cracking for years. In the end, the greatest protection against a narcissist is not aggression, not retaliation, and not even avoidance, although sometimes distance is necessary. The greatest protection is clarity. Clarity about who you are. Clarity about where you stand. And clarity about what you will and will not accept. With that clarity, you become someone they cannot control. And when they cannot control you, You step out of their cycle. You reclaim your peace, your strength, and your freedom. So remember this. You don't need to fight the narcissist on their battlefield. You don't need to prove them wrong or prove yourself right. You don't need to dismantle their mask or expose their secrets. You only need to stay unshakable.